It was a typical Friday evening in one of Manhattan's fanciest restaurants. The kind of place where people came to celebrate big deals, birthdays, or just because they could afford it. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft golden light over polished wooden tables. Waiters moved around with practiced grace, balancing trays like acrobats on a tightrope. Adrian sat alone at his usual corner table, scrolling through emails on his phone while waiting for his food. He wasn't here for pleasure. He'd just wrapped up back-to-back meetings and needed a quiet spot to unwind before heading home. His suit jacket lay draped over the chair next to him, and his tie was loosened just enough to signal that this was off-duty time. But something caught his eye, a face that looked oddly familiar. At first he thought maybe it was déjà vu playing tricks on him. After all, how many times had he seen someone who reminded him of an old friend? But then she turned slightly, her profile illuminated by the warm glow of the restaurant lights. There was no mistaking it now. That smile, those eyes, it was her. Emily, his college roommate. His heart skipped a beat as memories flooded back. They hadn't spoken in years, not since graduation day when life pulled them in different directions. Back then, Emily was unstoppable. She had dreams bigger than anyone else Adrian knew. Everyone expected great things from her. So what was she doing here? Working as a waitress in a fancy restaurant? He watched her move between tables, expertly balancing plates and chatting politely with customers. She seemed so different from the confident, ambitious girl he remembered. Her shoulders weren't as squared anymore, and there was a tiredness in her movements. Still, she carried herself well, even if her uniform didn't match the elegance of the clientele around her. For a moment, Adrian wondered if he should say something. What would she think? Would she even remember him? Or worse, would she feel embarrassed about being spotted in this situation? He hesitated, torn between curiosity and respect for her privacy. But then he realized he couldn't just sit there and do nothing, not after seeing her like this. When Emily approached his table to refill his water glass, Adrian cleared his throat softly. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his voice low but warm. She glanced up, startled, and their eyes met. For a split second, recognition flickered across her face, followed by surprise. "Do I know you?" she asked cautiously, her tone polite but guarded. It wasn't uncommon for customers to try striking up conversations, especially men dining alone. Most of them were harmless, but some weren't worth the trouble. "It's me," Adrian replied, offering a small smile. "From Stanford. We were roommates during sophomore year." Emily froze mid-pour, her hand hovering over the glass. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then finally to something resembling relief. "Oh my God," she whispered, setting the pitcher down carefully. "Is that really you?" They stared at each other for a long moment, both unsure of what to say next. Years of silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions and untold stories. Finally, Adrian broke the ice. "Mind if we talk for a minute?" "When you're done with your shift, of course." Emily hesitated. This wasn't exactly how she'd imagined running into an old friend, especially not while wearing a server's apron. Part of her wanted to decline, to keep whatever dignity she had left intact. But another part, the part that still remembered late-night study, sessions and inside jokes, couldn't resist. "Sure," she said quietly. "Let me finish up and I'll meet you outside." As she walked away, Adrian leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. How had Emily ended up here? What happened to the brilliant, driven person he once knew? And more importantly, what could he do to help? The minutes ticked by slowly as he waited, replaying snippets of their college days in his head. He remembered how Emily used to stay up late working on projects, determined to ace every assignment. She was always the first to volunteer for group presentations, the one who kept everyone motivated when deadlines loomed. Where did that fire go? And why did it seem like life had knocked her down so hard? When Emily finally appeared outside the restaurant, pulling her coat tighter against the chilly night air, Adrian stepped forward. "Hey," he said gently. "Thanks for meeting me." She gave him a weak smile, her hands shoved deep into her pockets. "Yeah, well, figured it'd be rude to ignore an old friend." They started walking aimlessly down the street, neither sure where to begin. The city buzzed around them, cars honking, distant laughter spilling out of bars, but their conversation felt insulated, like they were in their own little bubble. So, Adrian ventured after a while. "What brings you to New York?" Emily shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Life, I guess. Things didn't turn out the way I planned." Her words hung heavy in the air, loaded with meaning. Adrian nodded slowly, sensing there was more to the story than she was letting on. "I can see that," he said carefully. "But you've always been tough. Whatever it is, I'm sure you'll figure it out." Emily let out a short laugh tinged with bitterness. "You'd be surprised." And just like that, the floodgates opened. She told him about the struggles she faced after graduation, the mounting debt, the failed job applications, the sacrifices she made to keep her family afloat. Each word painted a picture of resilience, but also exhaustion. By the time she finished, Adrian felt a mix of admiration and sorrow. Here was someone who had fought tooth and nail to survive, yet still managed to hold on to a shred of hope. "You shouldn't have had to go through all that alone," Adrian said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "But listen, I want to help. Let me know what I can do." Emily shook her head firmly. "I don't need charity," she insisted. "I'm fine." Adrian sighed, knowing better than to push too hard. For now, he'd bide his time. Helping Emily wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to find a way. Because deep down he believed she deserved a second chance, and he wasn't going to let her slip away again. The night air was cool as they walked side by side, their footsteps echoing softly against the pavement. The streets of Manhattan were alive with energy, cars honking, streetlights flickering, and the distant hum of conversations spilling out from nearby cafes. But for Emily and Adrian, the world around them seemed to fade into the background. Their focus was entirely on each other, two old friends reconnecting after years of silence. Adrian glanced at Emily out of the corner of his eye. She looked different, not just in appearance, but in the way she carried herself. Back in college, she had this spark, this unshakable confidence that made her stand out in any room. Now, though, there was a heaviness to her demeanor, like she was carrying something too big for one person to bear. He wanted to ask more, to dig deeper, but he knew better than to push too hard right away. Instead, he kept his tone light. "So," Adrian said, breaking the quiet between them, "how long have you been working at the restaurant?" Emily hesitated before answering. "About 6 months now," she admitted, her voice steady but tinged with a hint of defensiveness. "It pays the bills." Adrian nodded slowly, trying not to let his emotions show. 6 months might not sound like much, but coming from someone like Emily, someone who used to dream of running her own business or leading groundbreaking projects, it felt like an eternity. He couldn't help but wonder how she ended up here, serving meals to strangers in a fancy restaurant when she should have been calling the shots somewhere else. "It's not forever," Emily added quickly, almost as if she could sense what he was thinking. "Just until I get back on my feet." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Instead, he waited, giving her space to continue if she wanted to. After a moment, she sighed and ran a hand through her hair, looking away from him. "Things haven't been easy," she admitted quietly. "After graduation, I thought I'd land a great job, start climbing the ladder, you know? But life doesn't always work out the way we plan." Adrian listened intently, his curiosity growing stronger with every word. He remembered those days vividly. The late-night study sessions, the endless cups of coffee, the dreams they shared about changing the world. Back then, failure wasn't even part of the equation. If anyone had told him that Emily would end up struggling like this, he wouldn't have believed it. "What happened?" he asked gently, keeping his tone open and non-judgmental. Emily paused, staring down at the ground as if searching for the right words. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, more vulnerable. My dad got sick, she explained. Really sick. Medical bills piled up faster than I could keep track of them. I dropped out of grad school because I couldn't afford tuition anymore, and I started taking whatever jobs I could find to help my family. It's been rough. Adrian felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected that. Hearing about her father's illness and the financial strain it caused painted a clearer picture of why she was working as a waitress. It wasn't laziness or lack of ambition. It was survival. Pure and simple. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely, his voice barely above a whisper. "That must have been incredibly tough." Emily shrugged, trying to play it off like it wasn't a big deal, but Adrian could see the cracks in her armor. Her hands trembled slightly as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and her jaw tightened as if she was fighting back tears. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the rhythmic clatter of their footsteps and the occasional breeze rustling through the trees lining the sidewalk. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "Anyway," she said, forcing a small smile, "enough about me, what about you? You're obviously doing well for yourself." Adrian chuckled lightly, grateful for the change in subject. "Yeah, I guess you could say that," he replied modestly. "Started my own company a few years ago and it's been going pretty well. Nothing crazy, just steady growth." Emily raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Nothing crazy, please. You were always destined for greatness. Remember all those business plans you used to write in our dorm room? Everyone knew you'd end up running some massive empire someday." Adrian laughed, remembering those early ideas scribbled on notebook paper late at night. "Well, I wouldn't say massive empire," he joked. "But yeah, things are good. Still a lot of work, though." They continued walking, falling into an easy rhythm as they reminisced about their college days. They talked about professors they loved and hated, the pranks they pulled on unsuspecting freshmen, and the late-night pizza runs that fueled countless study sessions. For a while, it felt like they were back in that tiny dorm room, laughing over inside jokes and dreaming about the future. But as the nostalgia faded, reality crept back in. Adrian couldn't shake the image of Emily rushing between tables earlier that evening, balancing plates while forcing polite smiles for customers who barely noticed her. It gnawed at him. This idea that someone with so much potential was stuck in a job that didn't challenge her or fulfill her in any meaningful way. "You know," he began cautiously, choosing his words carefully, "if you ever need anything, help, advice, connections, I'm here. No strings attached." Emily stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression unreadable. For a second, Adrian, worried he'd overstepped. Offering help wasn't always easy, especially when pride was involved. But then she smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile, and shook her head. "You're sweet," she said, her voice warm. "But I don't want to burden you. I'll figure it out, I always do." Adrian studied her face, searching for signs of doubt or hesitation. There was strength in her eyes, no question about it. But there was also weariness, like she'd been fighting too many battles alone for too long. He wanted to tell her that she didn't have to fight alone anymore, that he genuinely wanted to help without expecting anything in return. But he knew she wouldn't believe him. Not yet, anyway. "Okay," he said simply, nodding. "But just so you know, the offer stands. Always." Emily nodded back, her smile softening. "Thanks," she murmured. "That means a lot." They stood there for a moment longer, the city buzzing around them but feeling miles away. Then Emily glanced at her watch and sighed. "I should probably head home," she said reluctantly. "Early shift tomorrow." Adrian nodded understandingly. "Of course, let me walk you to your place." She hesitated briefly, then agreed. As they resumed their walk, Adrian found himself replaying their conversation in his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about the weight she carried, the resilience she showed despite everything life had thrown at her. And he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that he needed to do something more than just offering vague promises of help. By the time they reached her apartment building, the tension between them had eased. Emily thanked him again for listening, and Adrian promised to stay in touch. As he watched her disappear inside, he felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him: admiration for her courage, sadness for her struggles, and determination to make a difference. On the cab ride home, Adrian leaned back against the seat, lost in thought. He realized that seeing Emily tonight wasn't just a coincidence, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to repay a debt he didn't even know he owed, to give back to someone who had once been there for him during some of the toughest times in his life. He didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let her slip away again. Whatever it took, he was going to help her reclaim the future she deserved. The next morning, Adrian woke up with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. The encounter with Emily lingered in his mind like an unfinished puzzle, each piece demanding attention. He couldn't shake the image of her standing outside her apartment building the night before, grateful for his company but fiercely independent, unwilling to lean on anyone else. It was admirable, sure, but it also worried him. How much longer could she keep carrying that weight alone? He decided to take action, not impulsively but thoughtfully. After grabbing a quick cup of coffee, he sat down at his desk and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the number of an old friend who ran a nonprofit focused on career development for underprivileged communities. They exchanged texts occasionally, mostly about industry trends or mutual acquaintances, but Adrian knew this person would understand the situation. "Hey," Adrian typed, keeping his message casual yet direct. "Got a minute? I need your advice on something." Within minutes, the reply came. "Sure thing. What's up?" Adrian hesitated briefly before responding. "Remember how we talked about helping people rebuild their careers after setbacks? Well, I've got someone in mind. Think you might be able to guide me on where to start?" His friend responded almost immediately. "Absolutely. Tell me more." And so, Adrian began laying the groundwork. Over the course of the day, he reached out to several other contacts: a mentor from his early days as an entrepreneur, a recruiter he trusted implicitly, even a financial advisor who specialized in helping individuals manage debt. Each conversation added another layer to his plan, slowly forming a roadmap that could potentially change Emily's life. But none of that mattered if she wasn't willing to accept help. That was the tricky part. From what he'd seen, Emily wasn't the type to let others fix her problems. She'd spent years doing everything herself, likely out of necessity, and breaking that habit wouldn't be easy. Still, Adrian believed she deserved a chance to step back from survival mode and focus on thriving again. If he approached her the right way, if he framed it as an opportunity rather than charity, maybe, just maybe, she'd agree. Later that afternoon, Adrian sent Emily a text. "Hey, hope you're doing okay. Any chance we can meet tomorrow? Coffee's on me." Her response came a few hours later, polite but cautious. "Sure. Let me know when and where." They agreed to meet at a cozy cafe downtown, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and shelves lined with books. When Adrian arrived, the following morning, he spotted Emily already seated near the window, sipping a latte and scrolling through her phone. She looked tired but composed, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater that made her seem approachable yet guarded. "Morning," Adrian greeted her warmly, sliding into the chair across from her. "Thanks for coming." "No problem," Emily replied, setting her phone aside. "Figured I owed you one after last night." Adrian chuckled lightly, though he noticed the faint sarcasm in her tone. "You don't owe me anything," he said honestly. "I wanted to see you because, well, I've been thinking about our conversation." Emily raised an eyebrow, intrigued but wary. "Oh yeah? About what?" "About you," Adrian admitted, leaning forward slightly. "You mentioned wanting to get back on your feet, and I want to help. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because I believe in you. You've always had potential, you still do, and I think it's time you started using it." For a moment, Emily didn't say anything. She stared at him, her expression unreadable, as if trying to figure out whether he was serious. Finally, she let out a small laugh, though it lacked humor. That's sweet, but I'm not exactly in a position to turn things around overnight. Trust me, I've tried. I know, Adrian said quickly, holding up a hand to stop her protests. And I'm not saying it'll happen overnight, but what if you had someone in your corner? Someone who could offer resources, connections, guidance, whatever you need to make it happen? Emily frowned, her defenses rising. Look, I appreciate the offer, really, but I don't want to rely on anyone else. I've gotten this far on my own, and I'll keep going the same way. Adrian nodded, understanding her hesitation. I get it. Independence is important, but sometimes accepting help isn't weakness, it's smart. Think of it as teamwork instead of dependency. You're not asking for a handout. You're investing in yourself. She mulled over his words, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup absently. For all her determination, there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes, a glimpse of vulnerability that told Adrian she wasn't as confident as she pretended to be. What are you proposing? She asked finally, her voice softer now. Adrian leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. Here's the deal. I've been talking to some people, friends, mentors, professionals, who specialize in helping others navigate tough situations like yours. One of them runs a program designed to help people transition into new careers. Another is a financial advisor who can help you create a plan to tackle those medical bills. And then there's me. I run a company, remember? There might be opportunities there too, depending on what you're interested in. Emily blinked, caught off guard by the specificity of his proposal. You've already done all this? She asked, incredulous. Not everything, Adrian admitted. But I wanted to show you I'm serious. This isn't just talk. I genuinely want to help you find your footing again. She shook her head, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of possibilities. I don't even know what to say, she confessed. It's a lot to process. You don't have to decide anything right now, Adrian reassured her. Take your time. Think it over. All I'm asking is that you consider it an opportunity to reset, to refocus, to remind yourself of who you are and what you're capable of. Emily sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping slightly as if the weight of her struggles momentarily lifted. Why are you doing this? She asked softly, her voice tinged with both gratitude and confusion. We haven't seen each other in years. Why go through all this trouble for me? Adrian smiled, his gaze steady and sincere. Because I remember what you were like back then, the passion, the drive, the fire. You inspired me, even when I doubted myself. And seeing you now, knowing everything you've been through, it makes me want to give back. You deserve a second chance, Emily. Everyone does. Tears welled up in her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly, embarrassed. I don't know how to thank you, she murmured. You don't have to, Adrian replied gently. Just promise me one thing, that you'll at least think about it. No pressure, no expectations, just trust that I'm here to support you however you need. Emily nodded slowly, her resolve wavering but not breaking. Okay, she whispered. I'll think about it. They spent the rest of their time at the cafe discussing lighter topics, books they'd read recently, movies they'd watched, random memories from college that made them laugh. By the time they parted ways, the tension between them had eased considerably. Adrian left feeling hopeful, while Emily walked away with a spark of optimism she hadn't felt in months. Over the next few days, Adrian checked in regularly, sending texts to ask how she was doing or sharing articles he thought might interest her. At first, Emily responded cautiously, sticking to polite exchanges. But as the days turned into weeks, her replies grew warmer, more open. She started asking questions about the programs he'd mentioned, expressing curiosity about the possibilities they offered. One evening, she called him unexpectedly. Hey, she said, her voice hesitant but determined. I've been thinking, maybe it's time I stopped running from my past and started working toward my future. If your offer still stands, I'd like to take you up on it. Adrian grinned, relief washing over him. Of course it stands, he replied without missing a beat. Let's get started. From that point on, their partnership became official. Emily dove into the resources Adrian provided, attending workshops, meeting with advisors, and exploring potential career paths. It wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration, self-doubt, and exhaustion. But with Adrian cheering her on, every step of the way she began to rediscover the strength and ambition that had once defined her. As weeks turned into months, Emily transformed, not just professionally, but personally. The weight she'd carried for so long began to lift, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. And though she still had a long road ahead, she faced it with courage, knowing she wasn't walking it alone anymore. The weeks following Emily's decision to accept Adrian's help felt like a whirlwind. For the first time in years, she found herself stepping out of survival mode and into a world of possibilities. It wasn't easy, far from it, but with each small victory she began to feel a glimmer of hope that had been missing for so long. Adrian wasted no time setting things in motion. He arranged a meeting with his network of contacts, introducing Emily to people who could guide her through this new chapter. There was Rachel, the career coach who specialized in helping individuals rediscover their strengths. Mark, the financial advisor who patiently explained how to create a realistic plan to tackle debt. And Lisa, a recruiter who offered insights into industries where Emily's skills might shine. Each person brought something valuable to the table, but what stood out most was their shared belief in Emily's potential. At first, Emily felt overwhelmed. Sitting in those meetings, surrounded by professionals who spoke confidently about resumes, portfolios, and growth strategies, made her question whether she truly belonged. She'd spent so many years just trying to stay afloat that the idea of aiming higher felt foreign and intimidating. But Adrian noticed her hesitation and stepped in whenever he sensed she needed reassurance. "You're not starting from scratch," he told her one afternoon after a particularly grueling session with the recruiter. "You've already done the hard part, surviving. Now it's about building on what you've learned." His words stuck with her, echoing in her mind during moments of doubt. Slowly but surely, Emily began to see herself differently. Not as someone defined by her struggles, but as someone capable of overcoming them. One of the biggest turning points came when Adrian invited Emily to visit his company. It wasn't an official job offer, at least not yet. Instead, he framed it as an opportunity for her to observe, learn, and explore what working in a corporate environment might look like. The invitation caught Emily off guard, but she accepted, curious, to see what Adrian's world was like. The day of the visit, Emily arrived at the sleek high-rise building housing Adrian's company. As she stepped inside the lobby, she couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and intimidation. The space buzzed with energy. Employees chatting animatedly in glass-walled conference rooms, phones ringing in the background, and the faint hum of keyboards clicking away. It was a far cry from the quiet rhythm of waiting tables, and for a moment, Emily wondered if she'd made a mistake coming here. But then Adrian appeared, greeting her with a warm smile. "Welcome," he said, gesturing for her to follow him. "Let me show you around." Over the next few hours, Adrian gave her a tour of the office, introducing her to key members of his team and explaining how different departments work together. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He openly discussed the challenges of running a business, the long hours, and the pressure to deliver results. Yet he also highlighted the rewards, the satisfaction of solving problems, the thrill of innovation, and the sense of accomplishment that came from seeing ideas come to life. As they walked through the bustling workspace, Emily found herself drawn to the creative department. The walls were covered in colorful sketches, sticky notes, and brainstorming charts. A group of designers huddled around a table, debating the merits of various layouts for an upcoming campaign. Something about the scene resonated with her, stirring memories of college projects where she'd poured her heart into crafting solutions. "This is amazing," Emily murmured, watching the team work. "It reminds me of why I wanted to do something meaningful with my life." Adrian nodded, pleased to see her interest. "You've got the talent," he said simply, "and we could use someone like you here." Emily blinked, surprised by the comment. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said," Adrian replied, his tone serious. "I've seen your work ethic, your determination, your ability, to adapt. Those are qualities we value highly. If you're interested, I'd love to bring you on board, even if it's just for a trial period." For a moment, Emily didn't respond. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. On one hand, the idea of joining Adrian's company excited her. It felt like a chance to prove herself, to step into a role where she could contribute meaningfully. On the other hand, she worried about appearing unqualified or relying too heavily on Adrian's generosity. "I don't want special treatment," she said finally, her voice firm. "If I join, I want to earn it." Adrian smiled, clearly expecting this reaction. "Fair enough," he agreed. "But let's be clear. This isn't charity. It's a partnership. You'll have responsibilities, goals, deadlines, just like everyone else. And if you succeed, it won't just benefit you. It'll benefit the company too." Emily considered his words carefully. She knew taking this leap would require courage, discipline, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. But deep down, she also knew she couldn't keep living paycheck to paycheck, trapped in a cycle of uncertainty. This was her chance to break free, to reclaim the future she once dreamed of. "Okay," she said softly, meeting his gaze. "Let's do it." Adrian extended his hand, sealing the agreement with a handshake. "Welcome aboard," he said, his smile genuine. "We're lucky to have you." In the weeks that followed, Emily threw herself into her new role with unmatched dedication. At first, the learning curve was steep. She spent countless hours studying industry trends, attending training sessions, and shadowing colleagues to better understand the ins and outs of the business. There were days when self-doubt crept in, reminding her of all the reasons she shouldn't belong. But every time she faltered, Adrian was there to encourage her, reminding her of how far she'd come. Her coworkers quickly warmed up to her, impressed by her eagerness to learn and her natural problem-solving abilities. Within months, Emily transitioned from observing to contributing, pitching ideas that earned praise from senior management. One project in particular, a marketing campaign aimed at engaging younger audiences, caught everyone's attention. It was bold, innovative, and perfectly aligned with the company's goals. When the campaign launched successfully, earning rave reviews from clients, Emily felt a surge of pride she hadn't experienced in years. Through it all, Adrian remained a constant source of support. Their professional relationship evolved into something deeper, a friendship built on mutual respect and trust. They spent hours discussing strategy, sharing stories, and reflecting on their journeys. Sometimes, over late-night coffee runs or casual dinners, they'd talk about personal aspirations, fears, and dreams. These conversations revealed layers of vulnerability neither had shown before, bringing them closer than ever. Yet, despite the growing connection, both were cautious about crossing any boundaries. Adrian respected Emily's independence, never pushing her to accept more help than she was comfortable with. And Emily, in turn, appreciated his restraint, knowing that their bond was rooted in authenticity rather than obligation. By the end of her trial period, Emily had proven herself beyond anyone's expectations, including her own. Adrian called her into his office one afternoon, a wide grin spreading across his face. "I think it's safe to say you've earned your place here," he announced, handing her a formal contract. "Congratulations, Emily. You're officially part of the team." Tears welled up in her eyes as she accepted the document, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. For so long, she'd doubted her worth, convinced she'd never escape the shadows of her past. Now, standing in Adrian's office, surrounded by evidence of her hard work and resilience, she realized she'd done more than survive. She'd thrived. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Adrian shook his head, brushing off the gratitude. "Don't thank me," he said earnestly. "This is all you. You did the heavy lifting. I just gave you a push." As they left the office together that evening, the city skyline glowing in the distance, Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Life still held its challenges, but for the first time in a long time, she faced them with confidence and hope. The months flew by in a blur of deadlines, brainstorming sessions, and late nights spent perfecting projects. Emily had settled into her role at the company with an energy that surprised even herself. What started as a trial period quickly turned into something much bigger, a chance to rediscover who she was and what she was capable of achieving. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Every step forward came with its own set of challenges, moments where self-doubt crept in and threatened to pull her back. One of the hardest parts was dealing with imposter syndrome. No matter how many successful campaigns she led or glowing reviews she received, there was always a nagging voice inside her head whispering that she didn't belong. At first, she tried to ignore it, burying herself in work to prove her worth. But eventually, Adrian noticed the toll it was taking on her. "You've been working non-stop," he said one evening as they sat together in his office, going over the details of an upcoming project. "When's the last time you took a break?" Emily shrugged, pretending it wasn't a big deal. "I'm fine," she replied, avoiding his gaze, "just trying to stay ahead." Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "You're doing great work," he said firmly, "but burning yourself out isn't going to help anyone. You need to take care of yourself too." His words hit home, though Emily hated to admit it. She'd spent so long pushing through hardship that slowing down felt unnatural, almost like admitting weakness. Still, Adrian's concern reminded her that success wasn't just about results. It was also about balance. Over time, she learned to listen to his advice. She started setting boundaries, carving out time for herself outside of work. Sometimes it meant leaving the office early to catch a yoga class or spending weekends exploring the city instead of answering emails. Other times, it meant simply sitting quietly with a cup of tea and letting herself breathe. These small changes made a world of difference, helping her recharge and refocus. Another challenge came from her colleagues. While most of them welcomed her warmly, there were a few who questioned her rapid rise within the company. Whispers circulated around the office, some curious, others skeptical. A handful of coworkers seemed to view her success as more of a favor than a merit-based achievement. At first, Emily tried to brush it off, telling herself their opinions didn't matter. But when someone made a snide comment during a team meeting about connections opening doors, she felt a surge of frustration. Afterward, she approached Adrian, torn between anger and hurt. "I worked hard for this," she told him, her voice trembling slightly. "Why can't they see that?" Adrian sighed, understanding exactly what she was feeling. "People will always have opinions," he said gently. "Some might be jealous, others insecure. But none of that changes the truth. You earned your place here. Don't let their doubts define you." He encouraged her to focus on proving herself through action rather than words. Over time, Emily did just that. She tackled every assignment with precision, delivering results that silenced critics and won over skeptics. Her determination became impossible to ignore, and soon enough, the whispers faded away. Despite these hurdles, Emily continued to grow, not just professionally, but personally as well. Working alongside Adrian gave her a front-row seat to his leadership style, teaching her valuable lessons about decision-making, communication, and resilience. She admired how he balanced authority with empathy, never losing sight of the human element behind every business move. Their partnership deepened as they collaborated on projects, bouncing ideas off each other and challenging one another to think bigger. There were moments of tension, of course, creative differences and disagreements over strategy, but they always found common ground, their mutual respect serving as a foundation for compromise. Outside of work, their friendship blossomed too. They began spending more time together, grabbing dinner after long days or meeting up on weekends to explore new restaurants and art exhibits. Conversations flowed easily between them, ranging from lighthearted banter to deeper reflections on life and ambition. Emily found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected, sharing stories about her family, her fears, and her dreams for the future. For Adrian, it was refreshing to reconnect with someone who understood him on such a fundamental level. Their shared history created a bond that went beyond professional collaboration, reminding him of the importance of meaningful relationships in a fast-paced world. As Emily grew more confident in her role, she started taking on leadership responsibilities. mentoring junior employees and spearheading initiatives aimed at fostering creativity within the team. Watching her thrive brought Adrian immense pride. He often caught himself marveling at how far she'd come, from a struggling waitress unsure of her next step to a rising star in the industry. One evening, after wrapping up a particularly grueling week, Adrian invited Emily to join him for drinks at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. The air was crisp and the skyline sparkled with lights as they settled into their seats. "You know," Adrian began, raising his glass, "when I saw you at that restaurant months ago, I never imagined we'd end up here." Emily smiled, clinking, her glass against his. "Neither did I," she admitted, "but I'm glad we did." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city pulse with life below them. For Emily, the view symbolized everything she'd fought for: freedom, opportunity, and the promise of brighter days ahead. For Adrian, it represented the impact of believing in someone, even when they struggled to believe in themselves. As the night wore on, their conversation turned reflective. They talked about the twists and turns life had thrown their way, the lessons they'd learned, and the people who had shaped them along the way. Somewhere between laughter and heartfelt confessions, Emily realized something profound. She wasn't just building a career anymore. She was rebuilding her life, and doing it alongside someone who genuinely cared. By the time they left the bar, the streets were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Walking side by side, Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but for the first time in a long time, she faced it with confidence and hope. Months had passed since Emily joined the company, and her transformation was nothing short of remarkable. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, stepping into a version of herself she hadn't seen in years. The shy, uncertain woman Adrian had reconnected with at the restaurant was now a confident professional, ready to take on whatever came her way. But tonight was special. Tonight marked a milestone, a charity gala hosted by Adrian's company, an event designed to celebrate achievements and give back to the community. The venue was stunning, a grand ballroom adorned with twinkling fairy lights, crystal chandeliers casting warm glows, and tables decorated with elegant floral arrangements. Guests mingled under the soft hum of music, dressed in their finest attire. Adrian stood near the podium, adjusting his tie as he glanced around the room. His eyes landed on Emily, who stood across the room, looking breathtaking in a sleek navy blue gown that hugged her figure perfectly. She looked different, not just because of the dress, but because of the way she carried herself. Her shoulders were squared, her chin held high, exuding a quiet confidence that turned heads. Adrian couldn't help but smile. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, the culmination of everything they'd worked toward together. As the evening progressed, Adrian took the stage to deliver his speech. The crowd quieted down, all eyes on him as he began speaking about the company's mission, its growth over the years, and the importance of giving back to the community. Then, his tone shifted, becoming more personal. "Tonight, I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who embodies resilience, determination, and grit," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "When I first met her again after so many years, I saw someone struggling against circumstances that would have broken most people. Yet, despite it all, she never gave up. She fought, she adapted, and she rose above every obstacle life threw at her." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "This person is not only a valued member of our team, but also an inspiration to everyone around her. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in celebrating Emily." The room erupted into applause as Emily stepped forward, visibly surprised by the recognition. She walked up to the stage, her cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and pride. Adrian handed her the microphone, giving her an encouraging nod. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling slightly at first. "I honestly don't know what to say." She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. "When I started this journey, I didn't think I'd ever be standing here today. There were days when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I'd made the right choices or if I even deserved a second chance. But then I realized something important. It's not about deserving. It's about believing in yourself enough to try. Her gaze drifted toward Adrian, gratitude shining in her eyes. And sometimes believing in yourself means letting others believe in you too. Without Adrian's support, and without the incredible team behind me, I wouldn't be here. So, thank you. Thank you for seeing potential in me when I couldn't see it myself. And thank you for reminding me that no matter how hard things get, there's always hope. The audience erupted into another round of applause, many rising to their feet. Emily smiled, tears glistening in her eyes as she returned to her seat. For the rest of the night, people approached her to congratulate her, sharing stories of how her journey inspired them. It was surreal, almost like watching someone else's life unfold. Later that evening, as the gala wound down and guests began leaving, Adrian found Emily standing alone on the balcony overlooking the city. The cool breeze ruffled her hair as she leaned against the railing, lost in thought. He joined her silently, offering her a glass of champagne. "You okay?" he asked softly, sensing the weight of the emotions swirling inside her. Emily nodded, taking a sip of her drink. "Yeah, I'm just processing everything. It feels surreal, you know? Like I've finally caught up to the person I used to dream of being." Adrian smiled, leaning beside her. "You earned this, Emily. Every bit of it." She turned to look at him, her expression softening. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That means more than you'll ever know." There was a pause, the kind that stretches between two people who understand each other on a deeper level. Over the months, their bond had grown stronger, transcending friendship and mentorship. They shared a connection rooted in trust, respect, and mutual admiration, a foundation strong enough to hint at something more. "You're stronger than you think," Adrian said finally, his voice low and sincere. "But if you ever need someone to lean on, I'll always be here." Emily studied him for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the city below. "For everything." Neither of them said anything more, but the unspoken words hung in the air, thick with possibility. As they stood there together, the skyline glittering in the distance, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. Life still held its uncertainties, its challenges and twists, but for the first time in a long time, she faced them with confidence and hope. In the weeks that followed, Emily continued to excel in her role, earning promotions and accolades that solidified her place in the company. But beyond her professional success, she rediscovered joy in the little things. Laughter shared with friends, quiet moments spent reflecting, and dreams she once thought impossible now within reach. Adrian remained by her side, cheering her on, every step of the way. Their relationship evolved naturally, blending friendship, partnership, and something deeper neither could quite put into words yet. Whatever the future held, one thing was certain: they'd face it together. As Emily sat in her office late one evening, staring out at the city lights, she reflected on how far she'd come. From the struggles of her past to the triumphs of her present, her journey had been anything but easy. But through it all, she'd learned one invaluable lesson. Resilience isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, again and again, until you find your footing. And this time, she wasn't alone.